hi everybody on screen. So nice to see you and to see all of you. Oh my God.
Can they hear you okay?
Can you hear me?
No? No.
You guys can't hear me? This is serious. Oh.
No, I think you just need to, but you can hear her, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you just need
the
to.
microphone.
There's folks in the room.
You just
can't
need to
speak up.
project.
What?
Folks in the room
Talk
need you to.
louder.
Yeah, I will. I will try. Okay. So, we've been talking about the Lotus Sutra, and we've been, over the last 4 weeks, we've been going to different chapters. And last week, Chris talked about chapter 11, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. And then I'm going to talk about chapter 14. So there's going to be like this little hairpin turn in like the middle of my talk. So I was thinking about this the Great Stupa event, and I could not understand what was going on, so I made a timeline. Because I had to figure out what was going on. It's like, what? They did what? So I made my timeline. It was very helpful. Anyway, but I want to review a little bit about chapter 11. And so I'm going to tell you my timeline. So the stupa springs up from the earth. And it's very important that it comes from the earth because it's our planet. It's our stupa. It's coming from us. And there was a loud booming voice from the stupa praising Buddha. And the assembly said, "Who is that?" Because it was coming from the stupa. And Buddha said, "That's abundant treasures, Buddha, from the ultimate universe." And Buddha emits a ray of light that illuminates all of the worlds, calling all of his transformation bodies so that everyone in the world can see the stupa and see abundant treasures Buddha. And then Buddha opened the door of the stupa with a resounding clunk. And Thich Nhat Hanh says something about this in his book when the doors are open. He says, "And just like that, you arrive at the ultimate dimension." And so abundant treasures Buddha, in a big booming voice, speaks out, again praising Shakyamuni Buddha for teaching the Lotus Sutra. And abundant treasures Buddha from the ultimate dimension invites Shakyamuni Buddha to sit beside him in the stupa, side by side. So the stupa is in the air, but the assembly is still on the ground. And now the assembly wanted to see the two Buddhas in the stupa. And for that, Shakyamuni Buddha had to call on his supernatural skills again. And so Shakyamuni Buddha lifted up everyone so that they could see the two Buddhas sitting side by side. And then he also asked a question: who among you will carry on teaching the Lotus Sutra after I'm gone? So that's basically the timeline. So I wanted to talk a little bit. There's a couple things I just thought that I would like to share with you, some of my thoughts about, first of all, the ultimate dimension. Chris talked about howling at 8 o'clock in the evening every night during the pandemic. We did that at Yalupa too, where I live. And there was this cadre of young girls who would let off the most blood-curdling howls in the middle of the courtyard. It was wonderful. It totally transformed everything into a different dimension. And Chris said that it was like we were remembering something that was unspeakable. And somewhere I read, when I've been reading about this chapter, but I don't remember exactly where I found it, it's that somewhere I read that the Lotus Sutra is the most important teaching that is untold. That's interesting. And Chris also described the ultimate dimension as poetic and intuitive. And so I would like to read a poem by Mary Oliver. When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks, and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me, the trees stir their leaves and call out, "Stay a while, stay a while." The light flows from their branches and they call out again, "It's simple," they say. And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. And I don't know very much about the ultimate dimension, but I think that that poem must come very close, because the wilderness is nothing but intuitive. I also wanted to say something about what Thich Nhat Hanh said about how he lifted up, how Shakyamuni Buddha lifted up the assembly so that they could see inside the stupa. And he says, so once again, the fourfold assembly appealed to their teacher. Can you raise us up so that we can see inside the stupa? Using his supernatural power, Shakyamuni lifts everyone up to the level where they can look directly into the stupa and see the ultimate Buddha, abundant treasures Buddha. Lifting everyone up here, and this is Thich Nhat Hanh speaking, lifting everyone up here means helping them free themselves from attachment. When we read accounts of miraculous events in Mahayana sutras, we need to be able to look past the mere words and fantastic images in order to receive the true message. So Thich Nhat Hanh says lifting up everybody was something different than just a physical act. He was lifting them up so that they could free themselves of their attachment. Have you ever felt lifted up?
Mm.
For me, it is sometimes the most mundane things. A hummingbird outside my window, or the plant the hummingbird is feeding on that completely takes over my patio. The 18-month-old in the community that's boldly checking out everything in the courtyard, and the full moon on a cold fall night. So finally, I want to talk in this chapter 11, I just want to talk about transformation bodies. I don't know much about transformation bodies, I have to admit. But Chris said last time that your transformation body might be your job, who you are in your family, how you help your friends, how you care for your garden, maybe even how you are with your dance partner. As I was listening to Chris, I wondered if people from other cultures, like indigenous people, black people, or people of different sexual orientation could be transformation bodies, because they have something to teach us. They have a unique way of seeing the world that we need in order to survive. Thinking about this reminded me of that story that I told you about Venner Farley last week. She was my nursing instructor, and she said, "No one knows you in this class. They don't know how you operate or have operated in the past. Maybe you might want to try a different way of being in the world. This is your opportunity." And I think Venner was inviting me to free myself from old patterns and old ways of thinking about myself. And she was helping me to move forward. In that way, maybe she was a transformation body. So here's the hairpin turn. I'm going to go on to chapter 14. And I'm going to share the screen in just a moment. So if you need to move to another part in order to see this, or if you need me to move this out of the way.
And you can come sit on the floor.
Okay.
It's story time.
So, chapter 14. This chapter is one of the more troublesome chapters in the Lotus Sutra, according to Reeves, actually. And I wanted to read something he says in his preface. And he says, "While I do my best to make the sutra accessible, I never deliberately compromise the meaning of what I find in it. There are passages in this text that I don't like and wish were not there. There are passages wait a second. There are passages, where am I at? There are passages that are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to understand. There are a great many ambiguities, some intentional, some probably not. My purpose is to not eliminate or soften such passages, or to settle the controversies to which they have given rise, but only to provide a version that reveals as much meaning as in the sutra as possible." So here's the parable in chapter 14. Okay, so it's a really quick parable, and I'm just going to read it. "A powerful, holy, wheel-rolling king sought the surrender of many lesser kings. And when they did not yield, he went to war, winning many battles. In combat, many of his soldiers distinguished themselves, so he presented them with all sorts of rewards: houses, fields, cities, gold, jewels, garments, elephants, servants, all sorts of good and valuable things. But there was one thing he held back: an extraordinarily precious and unique jewel that he kept in the top knot of his hair. Yet this king, when finally he saw a soldier of especially great merit, gave the soldier the precious jewel from his own top knot. So I just want to read on actually just a little bit more here. And in Reeves he says, the Buddha is like that king. He tells Manjushri. The Buddha tells Manjushri. He became king of this world and had to go to war with Mara, the evil one, and his followers, with his own army of followers led by sages and saints. So Reeves makes a comment and he says there's a correlation between this story about the top knot and Shakyamuni's Buddha's enlightenment story when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree. Mara, who is sort of a villain type being, tempted Buddha, threatened him both physically and emotionally in an attempt to derail his enlightenment. And it was like Buddha was going to war with Mara. But as we know, Buddha prevailed in the end. And Thich Nhat Hanh, Reeves says a couple of things that I thought were interesting in his commentary about this parable. He said the Dharma Flower Sutra directs us to seek out and reward the good that we find everywhere. After all, it is not only holy wheel-rolling kings who have jewels to give. Anyone, by seeking to reward others, can find their own life greatly enriched. Even if such a practice does not always lead to comfort, and you can be sure that there will be times when it will not, it can lead to a kind of equanimity that might be called trouble-free. So, this is just my thought about this. I think the point that Reeves is trying to make here is that the wheel-turning ruler is giving gifts of goodness and moves us toward equanimity, that we might see everyone as a Buddha. To me, it seems like we do something simple like giving someone our attention. You are giving them a gift, and they are giving you a gift of their thoughts. So I want to back up a little bit. I'm so sorry. About Mara, because I want to talk a little bit about Mara. And I have a storybook that I'm going to show you about Mara. Let me bring it up on the screen. Oops. That's not the one I wanted. Come on. Here we go.
How are people with the temperature in here? Is it all right?
Hmm?
Yeah.
The temperature. Oh, now I've lost it. Let me look again. Here we are. All right, so let me go back here. Share my screen. Yay. Right, thank you. It's like, where am I? All right, I'm gonna this down a little bit. So, can you see it?
Mhm.
Oh, yay, okay. And to go up to the top. Okay. So you can see it. Oh, goody, yay. So the name of this book is called I See You, Mara, and it's by Josh Bartek, and it's a story in playful rhyme inspired by the Buddhist sutras. So get rid of this. Once there was a person just like you, just like me, a good-hearted person who sat down by a tree. I'm having technical difficulties. Does anybody know how I can advance this? Oh, wait a second. No?
Okay, well, you did it once, so you must know how to do it.
I know, but I'm doing that same.
There you
Oh, there
go.
it is. Okay, okay, great. Okay, next page. This person was wise, and the wise find what's true. The wise one is Buddha, and the wise one is you. But there's another, there's one who you'll hear. This other's called Mara, and Mara's so often near. Mara, he sneaks, and Mara, she hides. Mara plays many mean tricks, and Mara tells lies. Mara whispers to Buddha, "You are weak. You're no good." Mara sneaks up to Buddha, "You can't do what you should." I see you, Mara, the wise one can say. I know you, Mara. Poof, Mara's away. But Mara comes back. Now Mara tries fear. Mara's got many mean tricks and brings them all here. Mara comes as a snake or a monster with claws. But each time Mara comes, the wise one can pause. Pausing often is such a good thing to do. Pausing will help us to find what is true. I see you, Mara, the wise one can say. I know you, Mara, and poof, Mara's away. But Mara comes back. And now Mara brings hooks. Yet no things Mara offers are worth second looks. I see you, Mara, the wise one can say. I know you, Mara, and poof, Mara's away. Do you also hear Mara? How about today? Now when you see Mara, what can you say? I see you, Mara. I know you, Mara. And poof, Mara's away. I love this story.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
So I want to go back to a couple of things in this book just to make a little point. So here, if you look closely at Buddha, right here, Buddha is smiling. Buddha's not trying to punish Mara or is not angry. Buddha is smiling at Mara. And the other thing is, I think it's back here, is when Mara shows up, Buddha takes a moment to pause to try to understand what the truth is. And it's kind of like he's taking the backward step, or it's like Zazen body. And the last thing I want to say is that everybody has Mara. Everybody knows Mara. Everybody sees Mara. And just so, I think that's just totally cool. So, anyway, that's the end of the story. But I have a couple of thoughts to offer you. Oh, what time is it? Oh, we got a few more minutes.
Yeah, good. I can't see. It's all yours.
It's 6:01. So why am I talking to you about Mara? What is the connection between the holy wheel-turning kings and Mara? First of all, this is the only time that Mara is mentioned in the Lotus Sutra. So I thought that was kind of special. And the king, of course, in that parable, is not even thinking about rewarding Mara. But I think that in these days, one of the most difficult things we have to contend with is with our inner Mara and how to transform Mara, maybe even just a little bit. Mara shows us in the storybook or Buddha, sorry, not Mara. Buddha, well, maybe Mara knows about this. Buddha shows us in the storybook that that noticing Mara is really important. I see you, Mara. And realizing that we've seen Mara before is also important because we have some familiarity. We've seen this person, we've seen Mara before. I know you, Mara. And when we fully recognize this inner Mara, they don't have any more power over us. And poof, Mara is away. So my fears, my temptations, and my judgment that Mara is bringing are things that I've accumulated by causes and conditions in my life. But what happens when Mara goes poof? What would happen if we could leave all the fear and temptations and judgments behind, even just momentarily? What would it be if we could be truly free? Would we be closer to being who we really are? At Yalupa, we have monthly meetings, and sometimes they're kind of contentious. At one meeting a couple of years ago, it happened to be a meeting where emotions were really rising high. And there was a woman who lived at Yalupa at that time. She was probably in her 70s. And she was an Episcopal priest. Well, the voices were rising and tempers were flaring. And in the midst of that, she spoke up in this very calm, this very quiet voice, and talked to us in this voice for a little bit, and then offered a slightly different temporary path. But while she spoke, you could just feel the tensions coming down. It was like she was focusing on our good nature, our good deeds and how hard we were trying. And it was like calming down a frightened child. As I watched her, I was kind of wishing, gosh, I wish I was able to do that. But I wasn't. It wasn't my time. I think that this is the point that Reeves is trying to make when he says that the holy wheel-turning kings were illuminating how we can move toward equanimity or by rewarding the good. And I think that's why they call them wheel-turning kings, because they're turning the Dharma wheel. And it seems to me that we all have the capacity to turn the Dharma wheel. And since we all have Amara, we have an opportunity to do good on this planet, even for the Maras in the world and for ourselves. Thank you very much. So,